Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the YouTube channel grecochess, the channel of the game of chess. And in this video, on the road to bullet rating 1500, I'm going to show to you the game that helped me reach 1500 rating in bullet chess in chess.com. Before that game, I was 1492. I was playing with an opponent whose rating was very similar to mine, which meant that whoever won would get extra 8 points, and from 1492 I would reach 1500. Whoever lost would lose 8 points, and if the game was drawn, would stay with the same ratings. But let me first share the screen with you. And as you see here, I'm only sharing part of the screen. Why? Because we don't want to spoil it. Had I shared the entire screen, you would have seen the remaining moves, how the other side would play, and so on. But we want to show it move by move, what happened from the beginning to the end. We start with 2 minutes on our clocks, 1:59 it says here, I'm not sure why, but it was 2 minutes, and after every move, we would add 1 second of our clock, the so-called increment. And my opponent was my compatriot, somebody called Anestis, had a rating of 1504, the 1496 is after the game. So I was playing with a slightly higher rated opponent. And Anesti starts with pawn going to e4, the most usual first move for white. And I reply with the French defense. There are many other choices, but I'm mostly familiar with the French defense. That's why I use it. Knight to f3 for Anestis. The most popular second move for white in the French is pawn goes to d4, but knight to f3 is also a good choice. And in either case, I reply the same way with pawn going to d5. We exchange now on d5. Now Anestis pushes his pawn to d4, and I reply a very symmetric way, knight to f6. So you see that currently we have both sides have lost their e pawns, both sides have moved their d pawns to the center, and both sides have developed their f knight towards the center. Fifth move, bishop to g5 for Anestis. You see this little booklet. This shows that it's still a book move. We're still in the opening theory like the previous moves. Till now, this means that it's standard theory. And I decide to reply here, once again, the symmetric way. If you send your bishop to g5, I'm going to send my bishop to g4. But computer thinks it's not book any longer. It is a good move. We completed the first 5 moves, and Anestis is ahead by 0.3. But let's see how game will continue. Bishop to e2 for Anestis, bishop to e7 for me, symmetry. Ideally, as black, you don't want always to copy white, because white having started first, eventually they will have the advantage. But so long as it's a decent move and helps you develop, that's what I'm doing. And keep in mind, you see now that we have not spent any time until now, meaning we have spent as much time as the increment. After 6 moves, Anestis has 1:59. I have 2 minutes on my clock. You can see the numbers here, 1:59 for Anestis, 2 minutes for me. Pawn to c3 for Anestis, no symmetry any longer, but now short castling for me. Short castling for Anestis. And look to e8 for me. Everything is development. Nobody has any real advantage. Nobody has really blundered. Knight to d2 for Anestis from b1 to d2. It says one has to be careful because the knight from f3 can also go to d2. So I would need to clarify the move is from b1 to d2 of the knight. Of course, on the screen you can see it. I don't need to see it in words. And I play the symmetric way from b8 to d7. We completed the first 10 moves. What is the difference? It's more or less symmetric, but Anestis has pushed a pawn to c3, and I have moved my rook to e8. The computer, instead of sending my knight to d7, would prefer my pawn to h6 to pose the the white dark-colored bishop the question, but here we are. 10th move, bishop to f4, Anestis will go there either way or other. So if he's going to go back either way or other, and it's the best move as you see, I don't understand why I should have wasted the move to push my pawn to h6. And now time for me to push my pawn to c6. And we are very, very symmetric. Let's see what is the difference. The difference is first I have moved my rook to e8, and second, while my bishop is g4, Anestis' bishop is on f4. But really, until now, the game is going very even. We've completed 10 moves, and what is the score? Anestis is leading by 0.15. 0.1 you see here, 0.15 if you add the second decimal digit. Let's continue. Knight to e5 for Anestis, and this is very, very tricky because it's very easy for black to focus on the knight on e5 and what he's doing, and forget now that the knight on g4 can be captured. Not only that, yes, you already captured the knight, but then queen takes the bishop. But I'm not falling for that. I'm going to change the bishops by attacking the queen, so black cannot, excuse me, white, I'm sorry, cannot ignore it, cannot do something else on the attack. They must first take back my bishop. But the moment they do that, the problem is that my rook and the queen are on the same line. If only I could take advantage of that. If only I could remove the white knight on e5 and my black bishop on e7. Let's start. Let's see if we can do it. My knight takes on e5. Good moves in the computer, not the best. The best would be bishop is the first one to move. Because now bishop takes. Computer would rather have the pawn take. Because the pawn is difficult to be removed while the bishop not so hard. And my bishop goes to d6, attacking the white bishop. You see that if white decides to use their bishop to take my bishop, to take either my bishop or my knight, my bishop clearly they lose the queen. If they take the knight, yes, they lose the queen. They take my queen, and they take the bishop and don't win. But if they take my knight, I'm going to take with the bishop with my queen, and their queen is an attack. Computer likes my move, and let's see how Anestis is going to react. More protection to his bishop, pawn to f4. Not a bad idea to provide extra protection to the bishop, especially since this bishop covers the queen on e2, but the problem is that the diagonal from a7 to g1 is, I wouldn't say completely open. There's a pawn on d5, but it's more exposed. There's only one instead of two pawns blocking it. If only I can take advantage of that. If only I can put my dark-colored bishop on this diagonal and the queen be behind, then I pin the queen. But these are, for the time being, pipe dreams. What will I play? Let's see if we can remove this pawn. Mine is a miss. Computer wants me to put my knight back to d7 because they're attacking 3 times the bishop is defended 3 times. Let's see what will happen if I put it here. The bishop is attacked. First of all, the bishop cannot move. Moves anywhere, they lose their queen. It's attacked 3 times. Once my knight, once my bishop, and once my rook. Defended 3 times by the two pawns and the queen. Not so easy to get rid of it because they'll take it with any of the two pawns. Ideally, the f pawn so they don't open the diagonal. And then I cannot take it back so easily. But computer would rather have me make that move instead of pushing my pawn to c5. Let's see what Anestis will do. Knight f3. Inaccuracy. The comment says they didn't find the right idea. The right idea is to put the queen on b5 and attack my pawn on b7. How to reply? My knight to e4, good move, not the best. The best would be to take the pawn. And how things are going? Completed 15 moves, and now I'm ahead by 0.48, but still a very small advantage. Doesn't mean too much. Let's continue. Rook to d1 for Anestis, another inaccuracy. My bishop takes the opponent's bishop. Computer doesn't like you to have my pawn take their pawn. Takes it on e5. And Anestis, of course, is going to use the f pawn. Computer wants the d pawn. Yes, because then the diagonal opens, but their rook is facing my queen. I take on d4. Again, take on d4. My queen goes to b6. I'm outside the diagonal. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm outside the d file facing the white rook. And now I'm not threatening anything. b2 and d4 pawns are covered, accepting some pressure perhaps. Let's see what Anestis will do. Rook goes to c1, the open file. Wonderful idea to have the rook in the open file, even though the computer thinks it's only a good move and would rather have the rook go to c3. To d3, maybe d3, then b3, threaten my queen, exerting pressure on b7. Okay. My rook goes to c8, challenge the open file. And the two rooks have what's called a staring contest. Ideally, you don't want to be the first one to exchange. Because if you exchange, then the other side occupies, places the rook on the open c file, which you don't want to happen. But how long can you keep your rooks without making any concessions? Let's see. Rook to d1 for Anestis. Computer would rather have it go to e1 to support the queen on e2. My pawn to h6. Make sure the knight will not suddenly jump to g5 and threaten perhaps checkmate on h7, also giving loot to my king, even though the computer would rather have my queen go to h6 and not my pawn. If it goes to h6, then the rook on c1 is attacked twice, defended only once. So white may either have to exchange rooks, which you don't want to happen. He gives me control of the open c file, or find some other way to protect it. Not too many other ways. Perhaps place a queen on where I cannot go to d2, the knight will take it, maybe to e1. Can't think of any other way. We completed 20 moves at this point, and what is the score? I'm leading by 0.46. Still, we are more or less equal. The differences are very small, can change at any moment, especially when you play bullets. And look how much time we have. 1 minute 17 seconds for me, 1 minute 34 seconds for my opponent. Too easy to make mistakes. Let's continue. Queen to e3, which the computer thinks a mistake. Because the b2 pawn is hanging. But will I see it? Nope. Missed the chance to get the pawn. But also Anestis misses the chance to get it with the queen. He wants to place a rook on the open file, but now the b2 pawn is mine. So finally, I have the material balance is broken and I have an extra pawn. But is this enough to win? I don't think so. But still, it's a nice beginning if we can continue it. Pawn to e3 for Anestis, saves the pawn. My queen to b6 goes back. Knight to h4 for Anestis, and computer says it is a blunder. Why it's a blunder? Now that we have all the luxury and all the time in the world to see, if I take the pawn here, and the pawn Anestis cannot take my rook back because the queen may check. So I can easily win an extra pawn. I don't see anything else, but let's see what's going to happen. My queen goes to e6, it's a miss. And yes, the computer wants my rook to take the pawn. Before it couldn't do it because the knight on f3 would take my rook. So I miss a chance to win a second pawn. Rook goes to f1 for Anestis, threatening, not threatening, but exerting pressure on the f7 pawn. My rook goes to c8. The open c file. We completed 25 moves. I'm ahead by 1.33. Is this enough to win? Not yet, but I start being better. Knight to 5 for Anestis. If I'm not careful, checkmate on g7. Queen needs... I cannot go in 2 moves because the knight will take it, but queen needs not that many moves to f7 if I'm not careful. But I'm placing my rook on c3, attacking the queen. So white has to be careful of the queen, and Anestis has to be careful where to place it. Forget about the third rank. Forget about f2, d2, my knight will take them. It's e1, e2, or f4. F4, yes, they they have a battery, meaning rook and queen pointing towards my f7 pawn. So that's what Anestis does. Placing the queen on f4, and if the knight on f5 could disappear, queen and rook have a very powerful attack along the f file. What will I do? My knight to g5. Give more protection to the f7 pawn, but computer doesn't like it. Computer wants my king to go to h7. And the result is from being up by 112, now the game is even. You see how easy to lose the advantage. But let's see what will happen now. Knight to d6 for Anestis, threatening my pawn on b7. And I'm going first to win the pawn on a3. I'm not sure how good is the idea to go for pawns when on the other side of the board when your king is on fire. Look what's happening. It is that my pawn on f7 here is attacked 3 times. By the knight on d6, by the queen on f4, and by the rook on f1. How many times defended? Also defended 3 times. By my knight on g5, the queen on, sorry, the knight on g5, the queen on e6, and the king on g8. But if Anestis can push the pawn to h4, think about it, my knight has to leave, and no matter where it goes, the f7 pawn is lost. And it's not just any pawn that's lost. It's not like the a and b pawns that just grabbed now, but it's the pawn that protects a king. And Estes, instead of thinking like that, he takes my pawn on b7. Exactly that's what he should have done. Push the pawn to h4. He takes a pawn. And what do I do now? Since the a pawn is a pass pawn or outside pass pawn, why not start pushing it? But computer thinks a blunder. And now Anestis is ahead by 0.48. But let's see what happens. Knight to c5. Misses the chance to remove my knight. My queen goes to e7. Not sure why. We finished 30 moves, and what is the score? It is 0.00, completely even. I lost the advantage ahead, but Anestis at some point had some advantage. He lost it, and let's see how game will continue. Finally, pawn to h4, but now that I did it, now that finally Anestis did it, computer doesn't like it. It liked it many times before. Computer wants the rook to go to b1, and the computer code is for it is artificial intelligence generated, says the following. They are potentially weaken their king safety with this pawn move. They had an opportunity to punish your inaccurate play but didn't catch it. And the opportunity is rook goes to b1 and then goes to b8. And then perhaps queen can check from a5 if king goes to h7. But let's see what will happen. My knight goes to e6, threatens the queen, threatens also the knight. So white, Anestis was attacking, and he's going to lose at least his knight. Of course, exchange, but he loses an attacking piece. And yes, we exchange now. The knights go out of the board. And Anestis wants to attack with the pawns. Pawns go to g4, mistakes the computer. And the coach, the artificial intelligence generated coach, says the following. Advancing this pawn creates opportunities for you to target their king's position. Let's see, what do I get? And will I use it correctly? My rook goes to a2, inaccuracy. Still would rather have my rook to go to c3, but I want to support my a-pawn. Can the a-pawn be promoted? That would be wonderful. Pawn to g5, Anestis continues attacking the pawns. I take it. Anestis takes, of course. My king is more exposed after this pawn exchange. What do? Continue the pawn to a4. Now it is the best move. Can the pawn be promoted? Let's give a look. Rook to c1, ready to check from c8, and then queen from h4. Of course, the queen currently protects the pawn c8, so the rook cannot just check here because my queen will take it. But my queen needs to stay on this diagonal. If the queen leaves the diagonal, the queen, for example, goes to b6, just to give an example, or g6, then rook goes, let's say the following. Queen goes to b6 to be in the same diagonal of the king, for example. Rook goes to c8 check, because I'm not going to sacrifice my queen. King goes to h7, and then queen goes to f5. No, sorry, not f5. Queen goes to, let's do it again. Rook goes here. No, first queen goes here. Rook goes here. King to h7. Queen goes here, check. If my king goes to h6, it's mate. Once again. King cannot go to h6, rook to h8 is mate. So I block here. Queen goes here, check. Queen goes to h3, check. And I'm very near mate. But I kept the queen of the diagonal. This diagonal is the crucial one, where it blocks the rook from checking. And I placed my queen on h3. Why? First of all, it's not, I'm getting control of the h file that's open, and not only that, leading to my king. So even if Anestis could check from the 8th rank, my king goes to h7, it's not so easy to follow up. The queen cannot go there. Of course, the rook may be able to go to h2, but will take at least 2 moves. And now let's see what Anestis is going to do. Anestis wants to check, but he cannot check from c8. So he moves his rook to b1. Computer says it's a mistake. In reality, it is a blunder. In reality, one question mark is not enough. If anything, the computer would rather have Anestis sacrifice his rook. That is the best move. So Anestis' position is really bad. Let's see how's the position after the first 35 moves. After 35 moves, I'm leading by 3.07 when I push my pawn to a4. 6.5 after the rook to c1. 6.5, my queen to h3. And now, ladies and gentlemen, my viewers, pause your computer and find my next move. I challenge you, find it. And it's not so difficult as you may think. But it's good practice because you may have opportunities, and if you're not ready for them, you may miss them. And my next move is, drum roll please, as I say, queen to g2 checkmate. And that was my win against Anestis. And that is what made me reach the 1500 rating point in bullet chess of chess.com. And let's see what the review has to say. And we'll have to go to the other screen. Wait for a moment. And here we are. You see that don't expect high ratings. In fact, when the game was over, let's see, when the game was over, Anestis had 33 seconds on his clock. I had 24 seconds. So we used about 1.5 minutes. And if you add the increments, we used about 2 minutes for 37 moves. That is about a little bit more than 3 seconds per move. Don't expect too high rating, 62.5 for Anestis, 74.7 for media accuracies. And we played as if Anestis had a rating of 1050 and I had a rating of 1650. No brilliances, no great moves. Book 5 for Anestis, 4 for me. Best 11 for me, 8 for Anestis. Excellent 5 for me, 4 for Anestis. Good 7 for me, 4 for Anestis. Inaccuracies 5 Anestis, 3 me. Mistakes 6 Anestis, 2 me. 4 misses each of us and 1 blunder each of us. What I want now to do is, if possible, let's go to the stats. And we are going to the 300th bullet. This is what happened the last 90 days. The last 90 days is when I was trying to reach the 1500. I started from 1400. And you see how I got it. And the 1500, I mean what percentage am I? Yes, my best win is the one I showed in the previous video against JLO 1904. And I'm in the 3.6%. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. What else ahead? Now that I showed you the games that helped me reach a 1500 rating, we'll continue facing the chess.com bots. Let's give a look at the next bot we're going to face. Let me share the screen with you. The next bot is going to be Arthur from Wales. I defeated Arthur with the white pieces, although it took me 2 attempts to do so. I lost the first time. And now I'm going to have the black pieces. Arthur has the white. You see here, Arthur is the 7th out of the 20 advanced spots. We've been able to defeat all the top 6 ones, not very easily. Some of them we had to play more than once, in fact, more than twice. Arthur is the 7th on the series, rated 1700 as you see here. Let's see what's going to happen. Then a 2 more 1700, there are 3 of 1800, 3 1900, 3 of 2000, and 2 bots of 2100. See how far we can go, because my USCF rating is 1656. Now that is March. And even if you consider my highest of all the ratings, that is the Blitz, is 1800. So we are reaching a level that's higher than me, even though they usually play less than what you see, than the nominal ratings. But that's it for now. That's for this video. Thanks to all the viewers, subscribers, the likes and the comments. Thanks for encouraging me and for enjoying the videos. If you have not yet subscribed, please consider doing so you'll be notified of all the new videos as they come on. This is the grecochess YouTube channel. I'm your host, Harry Lausanisiris, and for now, goodbye.